The second generation of liberators are the likes of Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, or him and his national resistance movement. Then we have the RPF of President Kagame and his colleagues. We had the Frelimos in Mozambique, not actually Frelimos first generation. We had groups like what was this? The Kabila group that overthrew Mobutu. So that refers to groups that came in to topple the first generation governments, or to topple those governments that had freed us from colonial rule, or their immediate successors. So these ones also made a lot of promises. Now they promised democracy, they promised economic prosperity, they promised good health. They made pretty much the same promises as those that had gone before them. And as we can see, they haven't been terribly successful. I had forgotten to mention groups like the EPRDF in Ethiopia, the SPLM in Sudan. They haven't been terribly successful collectively, but we can single out a few which have made more progress or which have made more gains than others. And there, in that article, I single out the RPF, I single out the EPRDF in Ethiopia and Meles Zenawi. I single out the EPLF, which is now called PFDJ in Eritrea. Now, Eritrea is a country that I think we Africans have been misled into viewing in specific terms, and this has to do with how they are viewed by Westerners. But if you go to Eritrea and you actually take a serious look of what is happening, at what is happening in that country, in terms of access to education, education in Eritrea is free of charge from kindergarten to university. And there is a great deal of access. Healthcare is free. They make enormous efforts at building infrastructure, and they do this themselves. You will never find foreign contractors in Eritrea building roads. They have massive bridges, roads, dams. They have done these things themselves. In Ethiopia, when the EPRDF was still fighting the Mengistu government, I have been reading the works of people like Alex Deval, who had a very long-running relationship with this movement. And he shows that even when they were still fighting as a guerrilla group, they were spending a lot of time discussing what they needed to do to uplift the standards of living of especially the peasants, who had very little access or no access at all to land. They were discussing what kind of economic strategy they should use to make Ethiopia prosperous and so on and so forth. Now that same thing happened with the RPF. Some years ago, I was looking at Rwanda's ICT strategy, and I discovered that actually as early as before the RPF seized the power in Rwanda, they were talking about ICT. They were talking about how they could take advantage of Rwanda being a landlocked country and not seeing its state as a landlocked country being a disadvantage, but taking advantage of it and calling it land-linked. And so the RPF spent a lot of time whiling the bush, again, discussing what they would do with power if they took power. And as we have seen them over the last 27 years, they have widened access to education, widened access to healthcare. Rwanda is the only country, I think, outside of South Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, that has almost comprehensive health insurance. They have built infrastructure. Right now, I've just been doing a study on a very small part of the agricultural sector, looking at Irish potato production and marketing and so on. And even there, you see that they have done a lot of work. But for me, the most impressive thing is that one of their motivations for the work they've been doing in the Irish potato subsector is to make sure that farmers get good money for their potatoes. Because previous to their intervention, farmers were being fleeced by middlemen and other agents who are taking their potatoes pretty much for free and selling them for very high prices in Kigali and other urban centers.
Yeah.
But you can the RPF has put a lot of effort in trying to include the ordinary previously marginalized person and to make them actually feel like they're benefiting from liberation. So yeah, it's been a mixed picture, but on the whole, second generation liberators or liberation movements have usually made promises that they don't fulfill.